All right, everybody, it is 7 o'clock by my laptop time. So we're going to get started. This is the March Jericho Affordable Housing Committee meeting. Hi, Frederica. If you want to just give us a thumbs up that you can hear me. Awesome, thank you. So tonight, we actually have a pretty full agenda for today. We'll have an opportunity for public comment. Um, we'll approve outstanding minutes. I want to talk about that because my understanding about approval and quorums was recently updated. So I'll mention that there. We've got Zach Rivers here who's interested in the committee. And so I wanted to have just a brief kind of get to know you with Zach so that he could, if it's okay with the committee, be a part of the conversation when we then move on to hear from Chris Shaheen, our town planner, about the Planning Commission's current Enable Housing work. Then we'll go to our usual March agenda, which is reviewing roles and procedures and beginning to flesh out the work plan for 2026-27. And during that conversation, Zach, if you want to, and committee members too, if we want to follow up with discussion, answer any questions you may have. I think some of your questions that you had originally asked, we will be answering in our roles and procedures discussion. So it kind of made sense to do it that way. Plan for our next meeting and then adjourn. I do have a couple of, if it's okay with the group, I've got a couple of just updates I'd like to share. We usually have another business and I just left it off this agenda. Is that okay with folks? Okay. And any other changes that we need to make to the agenda? Okay. So we don't have any public in the room. Wendy, it's nice to see you public online. Would you like to make any comments at this time?
Hi, SJ.
Hi.
Thanks for noticing me. I feel like Eeyore. No, I'm good. I'm here both as a PC member and as a DEI member.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate having you. Okay, so I'm going to close out public comment then and move on to approve outstanding minutes. Is there anyone in the room who'd be willing to take minutes for tonight's meeting? Or Frederica, you will, Stacy? Thank you so much. Okay, so a couple months ago, it was brought to my attention that for committees, a quorum is actually the number of majority with a full committee, whether your committee is full or not. So a quorum for our committee technically is 5, meaning we can't make any kinds of decisions or vote on anything formally without 5 of us here. So the times that there were 3 of us, we couldn't actually approve meeting minutes. So we have a backlog of minutes that all of you have seen. We've sent out draft minutes and are posted, but we haven't formally approved them. That would be from February, January, maybe just February and January. So we can either make a motion to approve those minutes, or if you all would like to take some time to review the minutes and then do it at the next meeting, that's fine. I realize I'm springing it on you.
We have 5 now. We may not have that next meeting.
Yep.
I would suggest we
Okay.
approve the minutes.
Okay. So
disapprove them.
how about we make a global motion to approve outstanding minutes?
So move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say yes, or give me a thumbs up, Chuck.
Yes.
Thank you. I see a thumbs up from Chuck. That's unanimous. Excellent. Okay. Thank you for the
I have a
flexibility in that.
question. SJ,
Yeah,
I've
go
got a
ahead.
question. I thought we were supposed to have 7 members on the committee, so why do we need 5 instead of 4?
Oh, you're right, 4. You're right, it's 4, not 5. A quorum would be 4. You're right. Um, the nice thing about that new, well, it's not new apparently, it's just new to me rule, is that we can have like subgroups of 3 working on things instead of what we thought was just 2. So that's kind of nice. Anyway, okay. So I'm gonna move on to Zach. And again, I apologize for breaking this up for you, Zach, but I think it'll make the most sense to maybe just do a brief intro. And then afterwards we can all introduce ourselves. And like I said, if it's okay with the committee, to have Zach just kind of be a part of the meeting, and then we can answer any follow-up questions that you have at the end. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds lovely.
Cool.
Fine with me.
Cool. Go for it.
Awesome. I'm Zach Rivers. I grew up in Jericho, went to JES, Browns River, Mount Mansfield, then UVM, and moved away for 10 years and moved back and spent almost 18 months trying to find a house in Chittenden County. I work as an oncology pharmacist at the hospital, as well as run the health economics and outcomes research group for a genetic testing company out of Chicago. And so was really hoping to be able to put my family back here where I grew up and enjoyed being, and have talked to a lot of friends and family that are trying to do the same thing from where they grew up. And it's a pretty constant refrain from their parents and from them that that's not a choice. And so, in working in Front Porch Forum and seeing sort of been here for a couple of years, understanding roles, ways to get involved, this popped up as a opportunity that I think aligns with what I'm hearing from a lot of people in my networks, and a way to potentially get involved. As I shared with SJ, I'd like to understand what it involves, because I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old right now, and I will be blunt, they are more important to me than almost anything, but I'd love to be able to fit in a way to give back to the community that put me where I am today.
Awesome. I'm SJ. I will say that I started volunteering with the town when my youngest was 4. I felt like once she turned 4, I could start to become a human again. And this was the committee that I started with. And then it kind of snowballed from there, but it's absolutely doable. But you know your family best. I've been in Jericho since 2013, moved to Burlington in 2008 because this area felt a lot like home. I'm from Western New York. The work of the Housing Committee really aligns with my values. And again, similar to you, was an interest that I felt like I had some just personal lived experience with, but didn't come to it with any kind of formal experience in this realm, and just did a lot of learning and a lot of talking to people. But I think as far as the committee goes, just having an interest, a willingness to learn and to, step up and take on some projects is all it takes. I'm also on the Planning Commission and on the Town Meeting Reimagined Task Force. You want to go next, Eric?
Yeah, Eric Lippman, briefly met, sort of. I've been in Jericho since '94. Raised both my daughters here. One of them lives in Colchester because she can't afford a house here either. The other one's across an ocean, because that's a whole different story. I've been on this committee since it started, and have been on the Planning Commission for, I think it's 9 years now. There's a lot of opportunity in Jericho that's not being properly exploited or used or taken advantage of. And there's a really deep need in Jericho for more housing across the board. We're building too much at the top ends, but we need a lot of housing everywhere. Now, I've been in my house since we moved here, and even if I wanted to leave, which I don't, there's nowhere in Jericho I could go to that wouldn't be a stupid McMansion or a closet. It's a problem in Jericho that needs to be fixed. And that's why I came onto this committee when I first got created. So that's where I am.
Stacy?
I'm Stacy Burnett. I've been on the committee for 4 years. I lived in Jericho for 10, Essex Junction.
where my parents moved.
Okay, yeah. Good spot. We didn't want to be that close to our parents when we came back, so that's why we're here, but, anyway. So, I have a social work background and, have worked with a lot of folks in a lot of different income levels and was kind of motivated to see if we could be more welcoming to more levels of income, through housing. And I'm actually stepping back from this committee. My term is done. And I think just am pulled in other directions. So I'm very happy to have people who are motivated to come and join and put some energy into this committee.
Frederica?
Yeah, hi. I am Frederica Keating. I came to Jericho in the year 2001. Have raised 2 kids here with my husband. We both work at the hospital. When I came to Jericho, I was a trainee. Now I'm a cardiologist. And as a trainee, I was able to buy a house in Jericho. And it was our first house. And no way would be able to do that now in similar circumstances. So, as we all know, a lot has changed. Neither of my kids lives here right now, but I know that at least one of them would probably like to come back at some point and would not be able to because they're not in the kind of professions that would allow them to afford this. So I joined the housing committee, I don't know how many years ago. It must be like 5 or something by now. And I've learned a lot. I've really learned a lot in the committee about housing, not just in Jericho, but in general. And I think if I could say one thing that I've come to think about a lot is that what we discuss in Jericho and what kinds of decisions are made in the committees and town meetings leaves out one huge constituency, and that is the people that would like to live here but don't. It's the residents we don't have and we should have that are not represented. And so I think about that when I try to do work for this committee.
Chuck?
Chuck, I've been sort of a jack of all trades in various town things for many years, and I've watched the town go from a somewhat regular place to after 50 years of exclusionary zoning, just a very elite place that I'm quite frustrated with. I see Jericho, mainly because it's where I live, but I see Jericho at the center of the glass wars, disparity of opportunity, across the country. It's kind of a prototype exclusion, a prototype segregated community, and I think we have the opportunity, and I hope the temperament in Jericho to move in a different direction and to demonstrate what's possible. And just driving across Nebraska and Iowa, looking on back roads and studying housing and just looking at how people live. There's just so many places where people with money are used to fine living next to people with regular incomes, and I think we needed challenging people in Jericho to do the same.
Thanks, Chuck. All right, it is 7:15. I'd like to move us on to our next agenda item, which is talking about the Planning Commission's work with Enable Housing and all of the work that they've been doing specifically that they were charged with doing by the Select Board to enact many of our recommendations, all of our recommendations, I guess, except one. So we're lucky to have Chris Shaheen here to kind of take us through the work of the Planning Commission to date.
Great.
And I think that the introductions are a really nice setup to just kind of remind us all of why we're here and why we made the recommendations that we made, why they're important to kind of ground our conversation in that. So thank you all for taking a moment to share.
Well, and while you were talking, it made me think of something else I wanted to include in my presentation that we didn't include. So I was really quickly adding a slide or two, so thank you. Let me put this. Great. All right, so well, just a quick introduction for myself. If you don't know me, I'm Chris Shiggins. I'm the town planner for, I think, going on 18 months now. So I came here from the DC Office of Planning, Jericho, and although it's from a much bigger municipality to a smaller municipality, the issues are all very much the same in terms of trying to address affordable housing, environmental issues, and working with people that are really committed to the committees and things that they're working on. And I've really enjoyed working with and meeting everyone here in Jericho. I know it's been 18 months, but I'm still meeting new people. So anyway, all right. So I guess since this past summer, getting into August, I've been working with the Planning Commission on the list of items that was forwarded from the Affordable Housing Committee to the Select Board, which made its way to the Planning Commission. So what I wanted to do tonight, in terms of reviewing what the Planning Commission has been doing, reviewing the charge from the Select Board, I wanted to give some highlights from a virtual developers roundtable that I had over the summer and was presented to the Planning Commission in August. Then I want to get into some of the work that the Planning Commission has been doing to give you an update on that. So looking at minimum lot sizes, frontage requirements, and density calculations, that's a lot that covers at least 3 or 4 of the items on the list. I think it covers 3 or 4 of the things on the list that came from the Affordable Housing Committee. Then a discussion about housing incentives, and then based on what I've sort of learned over the last year and a half, some ideas that I would like to share with you that I think the Affordable Housing Committee might be able to work on to help promote housing in Jericho. All right, so the first is, oh, and I made copies. I wasn't planning on giving a PowerPoint presentation, although I was told it'd be disappointing if I didn't. So, all along, yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. All right, so this is
Chuck and, I'm sorry, Chuck and Frederica, would it be easier if this was emailed, if the slides were emailed to you, or is viewing it on the screen okay?
I'm happy with seeing it on the screen, and if I want to see it again, I can always watch a recording of the
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, I can read. I'm fine. I can read it.
Okay, great.
And then the other thing that we've been doing with the Planning Commission is attaching the presentation to the minutes,
Okay,
so they can all be posted online that way too.
Great.
Okay. So in terms of what was sent from what made its way to the Planning Commission, I'll just kind of read through these and give you an update of where we are with addressing them. So the first was permitting fourplexes in all residential zones. I didn't put an update on that. There has been discussion at the Planning Commission that we're moving in the direction of allowing fourplexes in all residential zones. So that is something that we should be included in this cycle that we're working through now. I should also say, in terms of that timeline, we were hoping to have a public hearing by the end of April. We got an additional item to look at that is pushing our timeline back. So that public hearing will probably be in May. Then we'll want to do some outreach before it goes to the Select Board for the public hearing. So hopefully these will make its way for a final decision by the Select Board sometime over the summer, early summer, late spring. The next was removing regulatory distinctions between multifamily and single-family detached dwellings. I think the proposal to allow fourplexes in all districts is starting to address that. Another third was reduce or eliminate minimum lot sizes, especially in the village center and village districts. So that I would say is partially implemented already. When the Select Board adopted some zoning amendments in September, it included no minimum lot size in the village center districts. So that would be in Jericho Corners, Jericho Center, the Riverside Village Center, as well as the Riverside Village neighborhood. And then what the Planning Commission is looking at now are significant proposed reductions in lot sizes in the village commercial and low density residential districts, And I'm going to go into some more detail of that later in the presentation. Another was to greatly reduce or eliminate frontage requirements, especially in the village center and village districts. So again, there's no minimum lot size in the village centers, so that has been a partial implementation already. And the significant reductions in the minimum lot sizes for those other districts I mentioned addresses that as well. The next was permitting multiple houses on a lot with the requisite acreage without requiring a subdivision. That's already something that's allowed as of September in our village center districts. It is something you can also do through a planned unit development now. Although this is something I've been looking at a little more just in the last month or so, pull together some more information to bring that to the planning commission for discussion, because it's not something we've really gotten into at the planning commission yet. Number 6 was permit and incentivize clusters of small dwellings and PUDs. There are already regulations that provide incentives for small dwellings as part of PUDs, but something that the planning commission is looking at is a proposal to provide an incentive that would promote clustering more. So I think packaged together, those would address that. The 7th was updating density calculations to allow and incentivize smaller, denser housing options and more housing types. Again, I think the work that we're looking at in terms of reducing the minimum lot sizes is going to go a long way in addressing that. The 8th was an updated fee structure to incentivize rather than burden diverse housing types and building small. I think that got cut off. There's more to that sentence. But that one I cannot give you an update on. That one was, well, actually I can give you an update, but it's not something that the planning commission is working on. The select board wanted to hold on to that one for their own to work on. They have had a couple of discussions on it. There is a working group that is looking at that. I know they have looked at some permit fees, comparing them to surrounding towns. But that is not something I'm involved in. I can't really tell you more about that. And then the 9th was removing eligibility requirements for buildings that were constructed for adaptive reuse of existing structures. It specifically in the regulations had talked about buildings constructed prior to 1955, and we did amend that to make it, I think, a rolling date, so it wasn't tied to 1955, and that was adopted as part of the amendments that were in September. That was me talking a lot. I don't know if you have any questions about these. I am going to go into just some other background information before getting to the work that the planning commission has been doing specifically.
Frederica, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, thanks so much for coming to the committee. This is great because it kind of closes a loop because we put most of those on the board, if not all of them, and brought them to the select board, and then the select board approved them, and then they came to you, and it's nice to hear exactly where things are. I have a question going back to like the beginning. What do you mean by charge from select board to the planning commission? If the charge was, the select board has adopted all these things and it wants the planning commission to basically implement them, say in zoning, if that was the charge, then why are you now saying you're kind of revisiting all of this? And for example, the first one, permitting fourplexes, you're discussing and you're going to come up with a proposal, and then you're going to bring that back to the select board. Isn't that kind of circular? Hasn't the select board already kind of approved it? I don't understand that piece.
No, thank you for that question, and it's probably an efficiency of words. In my choice of words, they're a charge from the select board to the planning commission. It was a charge from the select board to the planning commission to look at these things. If you go back and you look at the minutes of the discussion at the select board meeting when they were talking about these things, some of these they thought were good ideas, but they wanted the planning commission to look at, and some of them they had questions about that they weren't sure were things that they were 100% sure they wanted to move forward with. So what we've been doing at the planning commission is going through a range of discussion from the very beginning to build a strong foundation of whatever the recommendations are that they're coming up with, take back to incorporate into the zoning and then take back to the select board.
certainly not the feeling I got at the meeting of the select board, you know, when it happened. When is the right time to talk about each of, for us to respond to what Chris has said? I mean, can I raise a couple issues?
The things that are in red here are the things that are in motion.
Correct.
And are these things that you're gonna flesh out more? Or is now the best time to kind of go through some of these and ask direct question or offer direct comment?
There will be more information on this, yeah, later in the presentation. Like there's a slide that talks specifically about the changes that we're looking at for lot sizes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Chuck, do you wanna let's get go ahead.
I just want to put a pin in the fact that number 6 is not the recommendation from the housing committee. The recommendation from the housing committee was that no more land be required in a PUD for each house, each dwelling less than 1,200 square feet. So it was very specific.
I'll have to go back and look at what came to the planning commission. I think these were pretty much a cut and paste from what I got from the town administrator to work on, but I will verify that.
Yeah, it was certainly not our recommendation of the select board.
All right, why don't we, Eric, do you have any?
No.
Okay, why don't we keep going and then I'd like to suggest that at the end of our conversation, we circle back to this slide.
Okay.
And see if we've got any questions that either haven't been answered or things that we want to raise.
And I can also pull up what I was given and I can verify. I can answer Chuck's question.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. All right. There we go. All right, so I hadn't initially thought about including this, but I thought this was really helpful information. I talked to both a local developer, a regional developer that does affordable housing, and another local developer that does larger scale subdivisions to get some input or feedback from them specifically on zoning and housing and affordable housing and what makes it more challenging in zoning to do this. So this was a summary of that feedback. So one of the questions asked was what zoning incentives are most important to encourage housing. They emphasized smaller lot sizes. They talked about flexibility of location of septic, allowing more compact development, just greater density in general, regulations with clear allowances, flexibility to solve problems, cluster development that allows more density in the same footprint, greater density, all sort of similar, all in line with the recommendations that came from the Affordable Housing Committee through the Select Board to the Plan Commission. In terms of what zoning requirements were the most prohibitive, large lot sizes, driveway requirements, infrastructure costs that came up, the open space requirements, and then road specifications, specifically in Jericho, that our road requirements are 60 feet wide when you need to build a driveway or an access road that meets our public spec standards. Lot size minimums, natural resource protection requirements that would sometimes remove density or exceed the state. I'm not sure how much that applies here based on how we do our calculations for density, but I can answer that. Inadequate PD regulations that gave the DRB NCA too much discretion and requiring too much affordable housing. They were talking more generally, not specifically to the regulations in Jericho. Then the affordable housing developer talked about minimum lot sizes that were too large, excessive parking requirements, limits on number of units per building. I think that was something that developer had run into specifically in Shelburne. Subjective DRB review criteria, environmental review that exceeds state requirements, sometimes requiring commercial components or requiring expensive building features. I don't think many of these are included in zoning, in Jericho zoning regulations. Some are, but many of them I don't think are, but it was good context to make sure that we weren't including something that did hit on one of those. In terms of regulations that made it easier to build affordable housing, greater density, small lot sizes, consistent. Requiring affordable units was something that was pointed out. Bonus density to offset loss of market rate units. Having a clear definition of what affordable is, which our regulations do have. Specifying unit size for affordable units. Allowing mixed use in multi-unit buildings is the best way to get affordable units. And then the affordable housing developer, I was surprised, pointed out specifically that having a form-based code was something that they preferred. It simplified design and decision-making for them when they were trying to get through the permit process. That person talked a lot about municipal infrastructure, just the importance of having municipal water and sewer. They won't even consider building someplace that does not have both municipal water and sewer. So I thought this was just some good context. It really informed the work that I was working on, and I think it's informed the work of the planning commission as we've gone through this.
Can we just go back to a couple of things that jump out at me that I just want to put a pin in. One of them is the definition of affordable. I think that what's in our regs is 100% AMI, which is great. It's not consistent with the county and kind of like what affordable housing developers use, which is the 80% AMI cutoff. But I would also recommend that we consider looking at how the CHIP program is defining affordable, because they are including benefits that they would give traditionally affordable housing in this like 80% AMI cutoff to what I think we would think of as more of the missing middle, so the 80% to 120 AMI. And I think that that's something that we as a housing committee came up against a lot, where the 80% AMI cutoff is like that is for lower income and is definitely something that an area that we want to focus on, but it is also missing a big chunk of the kinds of housing that we also need in Jericho. And the CHIP, I think, offers us a permission structure to broaden what we mean by affordable. And then the other thing, and I'm sorry, I'm going to point it out, that the open space requirement just being a big glaring restriction and hindrance is there. But did anything, these weren't in the printouts. Did any of this, it's a lot of information. I didn't think any of it was particularly surprising, but did anything jump out to any of you guys?
It really wasn't surprising, was it? I mean, all of this,
Yeah.
This is kind of what I've learned in the last few years. And always, the thing that probably comes up the most in these last 3 slides is the lot size.
Yep.
And so Jericho is moving that way, but only for the village centers.
That's a great
I haven't
segue.
seen,
Let's go there.
I will say the one thing that I was really surprised by this was the affordable housing developer saying they preferred working under a form-based code. That was surprising to me. I wasn't expecting that.
I also wonder, just based on the other comments there, if that particular developer is really used to building large, a minimum of 30 units there, is just a kind of developer that we maybe wouldn't see in Jericho.
This developer does all ranges of scales.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just one specific project they had where they wanted, it would have been more efficient for them and more cost effective to put all the units in one building. And the jurisdiction had a cap on the number of units in the building, and they had to split it up into 2 buildings. So they had to have double elevators and all the infrastructure stuff. They had to do two of them.
Got it.
One, I think I did want to, you mentioned the affordable housing definition in our regulations. I believe you're right that the definition of affordable housing is at 100% AMI. We do have in our bonus density under the PUD, there's a certain level of bonus density you can get at 100% AMI, and then there is a greater density bonus you can get at 80% AMI. So it's
Okay.
at least recognized in our regulations.
Sure.
All right.
Zach, in case you're wondering, AMI, average area median income. You know, the other things we've been using, we've thrown around a bunch of acronyms.
I picked up.
All right, good.
Can I just jump in? I'm sorry, I was struggling with the mute button. I think the reason why anyone would prefer form-based zoning is because it provides relief from extremely restrictive zoning. That's why people, in theory, it provides relief from restrictive zoning. That's why people like form-based code, I suspect.
I think that could be part of what it is. It also took out the mystery or the potential subjectivity of a review body. If you're complying with what the form-based code says you need to do, then it just made it easier to get through the review process.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I am going too deep into this, let me know and I can try and go a little quicker. So the other thing I was going to go over, the minimum lot size, frontage requirements, and density calculations. So one of the things that we did at the Planning Commission was we looked at some sample neighborhoods, some model neighborhoods to see what their dimensions were. So we looked at the Five Sisters neighborhood in Burlington. That was definitely the most compact neighborhood that we looked at. We looked at a neighborhood in Essex Junction, a residential section in Bristol, Vermont, and then we looked at two subdivisions in Jericho, both Sunnyview and Snowflake Drive. Ross Lane, I think that's called Bentley Park. I think this gave us a general good idea of what would create a walkable compact neighborhood. At least that's the one of the things we were looking at was making a compact, dense, walkable neighborhood, as well as smaller lots that would lead to more affordability, more affordable housing. So this was sort of a baseline we were working from as when we looked at potential changes to the minimum lot size and dimensions for our zones. Chuck, are you marking up my PowerPoint slide?
No.
I think I really, yes, probably, not intentionally.
Great, okay, I wanted to make sure you weren't crossing out, not editing my slide. Yeah. So what you can see on this slide, the top is the current lot sizes and dimensions for, and I should have said this up front, we are looking specifically at zoning districts that are not the village center districts. So we are looking at the commercial district, the village district, the low density residential district, rural ag residential, and forestry. So you can see.
Can you move a little closer to the microphone? We kind of just lost you over here.
Is that better?
No.
Still pretty quiet.
Do you want to come sit over here?
Yeah.
Want to
No,
be
you
my
were
butt?
good
I won't.
before. You were
I
you were
won't
fine
bite.
before.
I can hear
Maybe-
SJ loud and clear.
Is that better? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'll try not to move here. All right, so currently in the commercial and village districts, the minimum lot size is 1 acre. In the low density residential, it's 3, and then in the rural ag and forestry, it's 10 acres. One of the reasons why lot size is so critical is that is how density is determined in Jericho, right? So we were looking specifically at the low density residential, village, and commercial. They're designated as our development growth areas. The proposal now is to change the minimum lot size in the commercial district from 1 acre to 0.25 acres, so a quarter acre. To change it from 1 acre in the village district to also 0.25 acres, and then to change the minimum lot size in low density residential from 3 to 1. Another thing that was guiding the work of the planning commission was going back and looking at the town plan and looking at the purposes of these districts and making sure that the dimensions that we were changing was still consistent with what the purposes of those districts were. So you can imagine a low density residential district by its name would imply a density that is less than the village and commercial, which is how we ended up with this structure. You can also see the row underneath the minimum lot size in that second chart, the minimum road frontage. These are also being significantly reduced. In the commercial, 150 feet to 80 feet, in the village from 120 feet to 50 feet, and then in the low density residential from 200 feet to 80 feet. And then we were looking at the minimum setbacks to make sure that they were compatible with those. Then we went through an exercise in terms of looking at how those dimensions actually played out to make sure that we were coming up with dimensions that were actually buildable. So I'm not going to go through these, but you can look at them later and let me know if you have any questions. But just so you know, the next couple slides show the proposed dimensions on a lot with the minimum dimensions, and then the housing units that were shown here are from Vermont's Home for All toolkit. So they're based on real plans, real dimensions. We know how many units are in each of those buildings. So we had a sense that these could actually work out. So we looked at both the village, commercial, and the low density residential to come up with an understanding of what those would mean. And then the PUD dimensions, which I didn't get into, but usually under PUD, you can go to much smaller. We went with a 6,000 square foot lot, which is a really tight lot. That's, I think, what we found in the Five Sisters neighborhood in Burlington. Something like this would really require a developer to have a community septic system where you wouldn't have a septic system on site. It would also be helpful if you were in an area that had a community water system, which we have some in Jericho, but not all over town.
Do you want to go back to the minimum lot size and frontage and density? Yeah. Any questions there? I'm thinking specifically Frederica and Chuck. I think Chris has heard from Eric and I about these.
Well, this is Chuck. I mean, it all, it's all kind of interrelated. One is on the light density. I feel like there's a bunch of that geography needs to be expanded. There's no reason, and the only places that we should be getting agricultural protection should be places where there is legitimate potential for agriculture. That's what the town plan says. And I think the LDR is fine, but I think that area should include certainly all of Plains Road, all of Skunk Hollow, and a good chunk of Nashville, and maybe some other places. We should not be putting land in an agricultural zone that has no potential for agriculture. And the 10-acre zone, which is 70% of the area that is designated for residential housing, to have it at 10 acres, I think the only way to live with that is if we have an incentive structure like the one the Housing Committee presented to the Select Board, that, we need some pathway for people, households making $50,000, $60,000 to have access to the rural life in Jericho. We have been managing our land use and our aesthetic and our elitist goals by moving around where regular incomes can live. And either on that first list that we looked at or here, there needs to be a pathway for people with regular incomes to live a rural life. And I haven't seen that in either of the first two presentations.
Frederica, do you have any comments or questions on these last couple things here?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, except I would also say that the premise of working on the low residential village and commercial districts, I understand that premise. I know it's basically a not just a local but also a regional directive to focus on these development areas. But I would agree that the RAR is probably too big and could be the LDR could take over some of that, and that might still be concordant with development areas, although I'm not confident that the Regional Planning Commission sees it the same way. And I don't think it's necessarily what this presentation is about or is going to address. It's just an editorial comment.
Thanks. Go ahead. Stacy, I didn't mean to. Do you have any? You're still coming with years of expertise. That doesn't mean. Okay,
And
I just realized I was doing that. I'm
thank
sorry.
you,
I'm
thank you
dead.
for that feedback, both Chuck and Patricia. All right, the next I wanted to talk about incentives. This I think is a hard discussion. So first, just quickly what the incentives are that we currently have in our zoning. When we were doing the round of changes that were approved in September, we really did look at, the planning commission looked at ways to help streamline the permitting process as a way to make it easier to build housing, so that could be seen as an incentive. So there were a number of approvals that were delegated to the zoning administrator that before had required DRB review. Minor site plan reviews can now be approved by the zoning administrator. They don't have to go to the DRB. We lowered driveway requirements. We increased the number of lots that can be off of a single driveway before it needs to become, before it's considered a road that needs to meet the road specs, Jericho's road specs. Then I already mentioned we eliminated lot size and density caps in the village centers. In terms of housing incentives, but bonus densities, this was, I think I mentioned this before, the one on the right talks about you can get 100% a housing bonus when 20% of the dwelling units are defined as affordable housing, serving very low income, which is 80% of AMI. I think, Eric, you were talking about the levels of AMI in Chittenden County, that's 83,000 for a two-person household. So I think that's pretty high, but it's considered very low income. In terms of what the development review board can approve for a 50% housing bonus, that's when 20% of the dwelling units are designated as affordable or senior housing. That definition of affordable housing is at 100% AMI. When 50% of the dwelling units are less than 1,300 square feet, we already have an incentive for smaller dwelling units, smaller housing units. And then when at least 50% of a floor area of a mixed-use building in the commercial district is designated as dwelling unit. So that's also very specific. It's just a commercial district.
Do you know if that affordable definition is perpetually affordable?
I did at one point. I have to go back and look. Yeah. I would think that that is something that would get worked out and defined as part of the PUD approval. It would need to be defined in the PUD approval.
Okay. And this is just for PUDs, so
Correct.
there isn't a way to do this without, sorry, you know what I'm gonna say, without setting aside 50% of the parcel for open space.
Correct, except in the village district, it's currently 25%. In the other zoning districts, it's 50%. And there is no open space requirement in the commercial district. And you can,
And the housing, yeah, just to also ask, the housing bonus then means that for 100% housing bonus, twice the number of units can be built without having the requisite land for that, right? Is that how it works again?
correct, your you would be allowed twice the number of units on the same amount of land.
And again, I am a broken record, but I think it's important to understand that the way that density and then therefore the bonuses are calculated is in places where open space is required after you take the open space away.
No, that's not correct.
No? Great. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
the
don't-
whole, no, it's good.
The acreage required, it can be
No,
part of
good.
the
Yeah.
open, yeah.
Okay, so the whole parcel,
Yeah, I can explain to you how PUD densities are calculated. So at the get-go, you take the full lot and you take 25% out to take into account slope, sensitive environmental resources, whatever.
that's the 25%.
Right, and then that is what you use to calculate your base density for a PUD. However, if you have a site, and that's if 50% of your site is undevelopable, it just stays at 25%. So that is different from other municipalities. Other municipalities only allow the 50% or up to a higher number, and Jericho took out the least amount to take into account at the get-go.
Okay, so we
There-
take out 25% of the parcel,
Correct.
then calculate,
Your baseline density, and then that is what you would use to determine your bonus densities on top of that.
okay, that's right.
However, there is a provision that if your lot is such that you can really develop 90% of it or 95% of it, you can go to the DRB and say, look, I can really develop 95% of my lot, not 75%. So the DRB can approve greater density. And then that is what would become your baseline density.
Okay. So in
So,
order
but-
in order to make up for that 25% that gets lopped off, you'd want to get that 50% you'd want to qualify for that 50% bonus.
Say that again.
No,
To make up,
separate
no.
question. No, it's a separate question.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, my understanding is if you want to build 9 houses in the 10-acre zone, you got to buy 90 acres plus 25% or something like 115 acres in order to build 9 houses. You then more than likely what happens most often in Jericho is those 9 houses end up being on about 10 acres. And that's an enormous requirement in terms of land. And then people, to get a density bonus, they have to build houses, that conflict with the aristocratic, whoever's going to be buying a house that's $1 million. And then they don't want that. So it never happens. The other thing about the current system is that to take any advantage of the density bonus, except for specific affordable housing, which I think is not, you really need, nonprofit or state support in order to do that. But in most of Jericho, you need 20 acres to take advantage of, you can't build half a house. So you need to build 2 houses on 20 acres in order to come up
In
with a
those
50% bonus
In those 2
to
zones.
build the
yeah.
third house. Well, yes, in 70% of Jericho, where the land is available. And so our proposal was that you could take the 10 acres that those $9 million houses were going to be on and say, you can develop those 10 acres. And instead of having to add 10 acres for every house, you don't have to add land if you're building houses less than 1,200 square feet. And what this permits is also, we have to approach this knowing that the current incentives don't work, haven't worked, have not produced housing. So what we have done is fail. And, Jericho at times has acted. When Jericho was concerned with how many houses were being built in the early 1980s and took this 70% of Jericho from 10 acres up to 25 acre zoning. to slow construction down. So we have in the past intervened in order to, to get what we want.
So
But
there's three different lanes of conversation here. You're talking about, I want to build this many houses. How much land do I need? You're also talking about the recommendation for our recommendation 8, which includes the not having to add more land for houses under 1,200 square feet. I was
Well,
talking
no,
about.
it's kind of the same.
Yes, they
Okay.
are all related, but I think we're approaching it all from 3 different ways, and I think that means that we end up talking past each other. So
Okay.
in an effort to get us back on, and
Yep.
I was trying to understand how to calculate the maximum possible density for a parcel, which again, all the same kind of thing, but coming at it from different directions. So this is what we currently have. We've got these housing bonuses that are really density bonuses, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And in order to access them, you're going through a PUD process, and we've got affordable housing here, which questions out if it has to be perpetually or not. You think that that's negotiable?
I'd have to look at it. I'd have to look at the regs. Not
Because
that it's negotiable, but whatever it is would need to be spelled out. If
Sure.
it's not spelled out in the regulations, it needs to be spelled out in the PUD, whatever the conditions are.
senior housing,
I don't think our regulations say anything about it needing to be permanent.
1,300 square feet. And then there's some mixed use stuff. So that's what's there. And then what is being discussed?
So let me go through the next couple of slides. I'm gonna go through these quickly. I looked at what other towns have. They have a range of density bonuses. Some that are in line with ours, some that are much more, like Milton had a 300% density bonus for cottage cluster housing. Some other municipalities had 40% bonus when duplexes are 1,200 square feet. So it's very similar to the type of things that we have or have been discussed. And they had other ones that were not related to housing. I'm just going to go past those.
Which
Go ahead.
incentives worked?
Oh,
Which
well,
incentives worked?
that's what I'm getting to. I sent a survey out to 7 towns, asking them for feedback on what worked. And there was like a handful of projects. There was like 1 in Westford. There were 2 in Jericho, one of which was for affordable housing that came about through a court-ordered mediation. The one that had the most successful was Essex. They had 2 affordable housing projects in the last 10 years that had 7 affordable units in it. Both the projects had 7 units, and both of those were in an area that had municipal water and municipal sewer. So even in Milton, where they had the 300, initially for their cottage cluster incentive, they had it at 100%. No one was taking advantage of it. They increased it to 300%, and no one is taking advantage of it.
And how do these incentives map on to what you heard from your roundtables? That was one of the questions you asked at your roundtable, right?
Yeah, none of them talked about density bonuses like this. They talked about other things like baseline density and not things that they could achieve to get a density bonus, but just more how the underlying regulations were structured and worked.
Yeah, so I would argue that maybe density isn't the thing, especially why would density be an incentive? I mean, there's lots of reasons why density would be an incentive. Small lot size for sure. When people aren't going to build more than 9 houses anyway, because they're going to hit the 250, Act 250. in order to make those houses, in order to make that profitable, now we're talking, and then we snowball, right? But we know that people really, really, really value, developers really value having their roads taken over and be public roads, or having help with infrastructure, or density doesn't seem to be a carrot in the way that we would expect. And so are there not other incentives that
Except
the
except
town
for
could
except
propose?
except the one that kept coming up in the round table was lot size, which is kind of similar, right? But that's a
Yeah.
zoning thing. So you know, having smaller lot sizes, then you have to worry about how you're going to avoid how that doesn't necessarily generate affordable housing. If you have like, if you take your lot size from 10 acres to 2 acres, you're just going to have McMansions. So so lot size alone doesn't, it allows more housing, but it doesn't allow more affordable housing per se.
Yep.
So then you need to do something with the square footage, as like these density bonuses, some of them outlined. But yeah, I haven't seen it used either in like following the DRB and the PUDs that were developed. They looked at density bonuses and they thought about it, and then they kind of moved away from it. At least from the affordable. There's other density bonuses you can get without building affordable housing. You can get a density bonus by, I think energy efficiency is one way to do it, right? So there's other ways, and developers were going after that more than after affordable housing.
Well, and that's an interesting point too, because so many of the energy efficiencies, like how many of those are kind of expected and part of typical building these days anyway? Like
Well,
are people taking
they actually
advantage?
take up the cost of the housing, right? If you build more energy efficient, you're going to raise the cost of building it. You're just certainly not going to produce affordable housing that
Right.
way.
So there were two projects in the last 10 years in Jericho that took advantage of the density bonus. The first one tried to use the energy efficiency, and the DRB wouldn't accept it because they weren't performing at the high enough level that the zoning code establishes that they have to meet.
Okay.
That's the one that went to court ordered mediation and ended up with affordable housing to be designated. The other one,
Is that the one on Morgan Road you're talking about? Because that didn't end up with affordable housing necessarily, right? They were in
that's what the,
mediation.
He,
it's
he's
a,
trying
it's
to get
a,
out of the contract to provide affordable housing.
I'm telling you what is in the agreement that is currently on the record. That is what is currently, and that is currently what is the requirement is. The other one was for a project that I think went from 6 to 8 units. And that one used the energy efficiency as the justification for the density bonus. And you probably know this too. When these projects go to the DRB encourages applicants to take advantage of the density, and they just don't want to do it, and they just all stop at 9, seemingly to avoid Act 250. And that's also what I heard from other towns that have the same problem.
Mhm.
Right, but they could put 9 units on 10 acres if under what we've proposed, instead of 115 acres. And that's the clusters and the rural housing that we've been speaking about. Also,
Yeah,
the one that has gone through in Jericho for affordable housing, the guy has decided that he can't afford to do it and has been back to the DRB to try to get out of that contract. Unsuccessfully so far.
What were you going to say, Chris?
I was going to say, what has been referred to a couple of times is the Affordable Housing Committee's recommendation, which I have not seen written down anyplace.
It's in our report. It's in all of our materials.
Look at that
Um,
closely.
permit and incentivize clusters of small dwellings and PUDs by requiring no additional land for additional dwellings deeded to be less than 1,200 square feet.
So I would just want to, I don't want to get it, we can talk about it later, but I want to better understand how you would see that playing out.
And I think that that is part of, I think the reason we keep coming back to it is because we have, as a committee, have seen a lot of this, have come up against a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. And so we've been thinking about, well, how do we crack this nut? How do we incentivize what we as a town have said that we wanted? In this case, 1,200 square feet. We've also thought a lot about multi-unit housing and other things that the town has identified that it wants, and that we're just not getting with the bonuses and the incentive structure that we have. And so that's where that came from, was this exercise.
So and what this would do is it would legalize condos like the ones at Starbird. It would legalize or make possible a trailer park. It would make possible a cluster of tiny homes. It would make, it leaves room for inventiveness and innovation, and it offers a pathway, some possible scenario for someone of regular means to live a rural life in Jericho. And when you pay $1 million for a house, you get a lot of things. You get good government, you get a good library, good parks, good roads, but you don't get to pick your neighbors. And we just need to make room for people.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I do want to better understand what the Affordable Housing Committee's ideas are for the rural areas. Because the bullet point doesn't doesn't land it in terms of what it would really mean in terms of regulation. So I just want to better understand that. We can talk about that another day.
No, yeah, it somewhere it got mistranslated from what we presented to the select board, and we can send you that presentation.
Okay. My takeaway, what I'm hearing is that there's agreement. The housing incentives, the bonus densities, they're not doing anything. I mean, they're picking up a unit here or there, but they're not effective. And I've looked for research, I've looked for case studies, and in a community like Jericho where there's no infrastructure, it's just really hard, if not, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's really hard to achieve the goals of Jericho, the Affordable Housing Committee, getting smaller houses, multi-unit buildings without having that infrastructure in place. So some ideas.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But let's make it legal. Give people a shot. I mean, we shouldn't ban something because we think it won't happen.
So in terms of what I think would be things to focus on, which I think we are, some more than others, but really supporting community wastewater and getting that not just in one area, but in other areas of town. Public education on what's currently allowed. We allow ADUs, there are changes in the village center. There are these proposed amendments coming through. We haven't done a really concerted education campaign to let people know what they can do on their properties. There's a Home for All initiative that the state is doing in 3 pilot neighborhoods where they're coming up with plans, pre-approved plans for small houses, ADUs, that someone can just take and then go and build them. They're pre-approved. It'd be great to have an initiative like that just focused specifically on Jericho. And then thinking big, like land acquisition and public-private partnerships to build housing. These are the things that would really lead to tangible, affordable housing. And they're not in zoning. These are things that are education, other types of incentives. It's not that there aren't things that we can't do in zoning, and we are looking at doing that. But there are lots of other things that we can and should be doing to promote housing.
So I think, yes, and we're here to talk zoning. So can you go back to the list of recommendations? Just,
From the very beginning.
yeah,
Yeah.
just to ground us there. And Wendy, I want you to feel very welcome to join in the discussion whenever, as a
Thank
planning
you.
commission member, but also as a member of the public.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Um,
Do you mind if we start with number 1 again?
yeah, let's go through them.
And I'm just wondering, I don't think I really understood what the concerns about this are. And what's yeah, so what it stands in the way of implementing that?
I don't think there is any. The planning commission has agreed to move forward with that. There's support on the planning commission to include that in the amendments.
You kind of said earlier that there is going to be some additional like outreach and community involvement, all those things. One thing I learned at a housing meeting early on in Burlington was that if you go back to the community, unnecessarily, then you're just inviting people, objections and barriers. And I don't know if it's so what was the plan about going back and inviting more input? Or I heard something about outreach initially when you talked about this.
So when the planning commission was looking at the changes in lot sizes, they are significant changes going from 1 acre to 0.25 and 3 to 1. And there was concern that there was not a larger public discussion about making those changes. So that's where that came from. Wanting to, once the package is together, going out and talking to the public and sharing with them what the proposed changes are and getting feedback.
I think
Okay,
some
and
part
were the fourplexes included in that? Was that also supposed to be part of going back out there?
Yeah, are you making that comment because there's nothing in red under status?
No, because that's where, no, not, I understand that you spoke to that earlier, but when you first started explaining this, I was wondering what the hindrance was about the fourplexes, and you did say something about a process that needed to be gone through before that was implemented, rather than just, yeah.
Oh. Well, are you asking why we just didn't change the zoning regulation like in a month?
Yes, I was just looking for clarification on what you said earlier about that, why it hadn't moved forward yet.
Oh, well, it'll be included in the package of amendments that are going through. There's support on the planning commission to do that. It'll just be bundled in the amendments that are being considered now moving forward. Sorry if I wasn't.
Okay. Yeah, no, great. That clarifies it. Thank you.
I wanted to call out, Chuck, I feel, well, actually, and you too, Frederica, removing regulatory distinctions between multifamily and single-family detached dwellings. I mean, yes, permitting fourplexes in all residential zones is a big step towards that. I think the intention of that bullet was, something that we talked about as a planning commission in village centers, which was treating buildings as buildings, regardless of how many units are inside of them, and making sure that the regulatory the frontages and the setbacks and everything were treated the same based on the building envelope and not necessarily based on how many units were within each envelope. Does that sound like a good representation of what we were talking about back when we wrote that?
Yeah, it was a kind of a philosophical thing that, if somebody builds a single family home with 6 bedrooms, why should that in any way be treated differently than 2 units with 3 bedrooms each, or 4 units with a mix of bedrooms? So that's where that came from, and it did have to do with more than just making it permitted or conditional. It had to do with things like frontage and all other regulations that would apply. That's why maybe it's not a huge point, but that's kind of where that was coming from.
Yeah, no, okay. I think it is an important point, and it certainly was to us when we talked about it, and it was something that it's the planning commission, we did talk about when we were talking about village centers and what's already been adopted. I don't know if that was something that we've talked about as a group or thought about as a group. You have a like a bug or something on your collar.
Did I get him?
I don't know. It freaked me out.
Oh, he's insane.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Okay. You got him. Okay. Sorry. That was really.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm very calm throughout.
Yes. Just unflappable, Christiane.
Okay, so I heard two ideas associated with this. One is like setbacks and minimum lot size and that type of thing. And I believe those are the same. There's no distinction
I think that's right.
in that area. What you were getting at, Frederica, in terms of like a 6-bedroom single family home being regulated the same as, say, a 3-unit apartment building with 2 bedrooms. That is much trickier to do. The only way I know to do that is to regulate based on number of bedrooms. I think I found one municipality in the United States that does it that way. The feedback that I've just gotten is that that's like not a practical way of administration. Like, it's really hard to administer regulations that way.
I don't
Anyway, that
think
was
that's it.
just my thought in response to what the discussion was.
Well, bedrooms do come up in your property tax. So you are taxed based on numbers of bedrooms in place. So that would, as a corollary, it does make sense to say if you're going to build a house with 4 bedrooms or 6 bedrooms, if there's a tax implication for that, it seems that you could have a planning implication as well.
I think doing tax assessment is different than enforcing zoning.
I think
Yes,
we're going down a
it's probably a rabbit hole we don't need to go down.
yeah, and I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, Frederica, but I think you were just giving a more elegant example than my word salad of what we were talking about. So I think we're all on the same
And I think
page.
it's a really good example, and it's one that comes up a lot, and
And it's less about regulating by bedroom and more about making sure that multifamily structures are not penalized or otherwise discriminated against when the size of the building and the, whatever is the same.
Yeah, because often it is kind of the unspoken intent, right? If you talk to people that want to avoid multifamily housing, they're going to treat it differently just because there's more than one family living in there, even if the building looks the same in other respects. So it is kind of, there is some discriminatory like background to some of it.
Yeah, and I think it's was addressed somewhat, to some degree with the 5.6 revision. That's when a triplex required 6 acres, but a single family home only required 3 acres. or you needed twice as much land for the threeplex, and that was somewhat addressed. But it's
Somewhat.
the bias, somewhat. The bias towards single family homes is, you know, endemic. It's just sort of through everything we do and everything we talk. And I think this is a caution on that.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're used to single family homes in rural areas is because that's the only thing that we allowed to build. You know, it's like we have this whole kind of character question, and our character is based on 50 years of exclusionary zoning. And we look at the results of exclusionary zoning and say, aha, that's, you know, we don't want to change that.
So to your earlier point about density and 5.6, permitting fourplexes in all zones does not mean that fourplexes are allowed on a minimum lot in all zones. So in rural ag, correct me as fast as you did with the 50% set aside. In rural ag, in order to build a fourplex, you would need 20 acres.
I don't need to correct you.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So the density is not tied to the uses that are allowed. This was what caused the whole confusion in the first place. And I say somewhat because we weren't able to get all the way there. So you are allowed a use in rural ag that you cannot accomplish with a minimum lot. And permitting fourplexes in all districts does not accomplish that. Rural ag and forestry remain 2 units per minimum lot area.
But when we look on slide 3, on the status, there is a proposal to allow for all districts.
And again,
It's not there yet.
but allowing them does not mean that they are permitted on a minimum lot.
That's true.
It's an important distinction that isn't always clear. And so when 5.6 gets raised, it's important to clarify that wasn't the change that got made. We increased density, but we did not change the density to allow any use on a minimum lot area.
I wouldn't say that it did not increase density. That's the
Sure did.
That's the catch. Well, 5.6 increased density for the growth districts. It didn't.
Yes.
It didn't. For the point that you're making about the fourplexes in the rural areas, it did not increase the density in those districts.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think I'm sorry, I think I didn't understand this correctly. So if we were to permit fourplexes in all residential zones, and thereby we would permit a fourplex in the RAR zone, that fourplex would still need 40 acres?
It would need 20.
The density for
20.
the density for the rural ag and forestry zone is still proposed to be a single family home or a duplex, which is 2 units per minimum lot size. So if you wanted to do a fourplex, you could, because the use table would be changed, but the underlying density wouldn't. So you would need, you got it? Okay.
Yep. I know. But that's why I'm sorry, that's why I'm beating it over the head. Anything else? It's 8:22. I'd love to wrap this up at 8:30. So anything else? While we've got Chris here.
Well, then I'll just say like Wendy and Eric, and if there's anything else that the planning commission's covered that I've left out, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck, for Chris, you have to help us find a way for a pathway for people with regular incomes to live a rural life in Jericho. And we've given you, and it seems like you haven't fully received from us our recommendation on how to do that. but it can't be nothing. You can't pass zoning revisions for the rural areas that don't make it possible to, yeah, that just don't make it possible. I also hope, Chris, that you will take a look at the regulations for mobile homes, because right now they're pretty much designed to prevent them. A normal mobile home, a good mobile home park has 5 to 7, I think it is, or 5 to 8 homes per acre. And you need maybe, I don't know, 20 homes to make somewhat of a viable park. And in Jericho, where the land is available, you need 200 and something acres. And basically, you need the same acreage that you would need for, a 4,000 square foot home. And, as you've heard from me, the reason why we don't have a mobile home park in Jericho is because we've prevented them. And I think that if we were to switch from just, and our mobile home rules are some of it are kind of silly. Like you can't manufacture a home on site. It has to be built in a factory and delivered. I think if we had something called a home park that allowed clusters of homes on leased land in rural areas, basically the mobile home park model. But, people in Jericho are go crazy about trailers. And if we described it as this is where tiny homes can go, this is where small homes can go on leased lots, and also, traditional mobile homes. And that would provide, access to people that would provide access.
Yeah, I'm glad thank you for bringing that up. We have talked about it. It is on my list of things to take a look at. It doesn't show up literally on this list that we have in front of us, but
it does if you take the wording of the not requiring additional land for dwellings deeded to be less than 1,200.
Yeah, it is something that I want to figure out how to bring think about a little more and add it to the things for us to take a look at. I think it will add some time to our work, but I think it's something we need to take a look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we did the last round of amendments, there was some discussion about just taking everything about mobile homes out of the regs, and I didn't want to take that out because it does allow a type of development. It's the only regulations that allow that type of development. So I think it's an opportunity to go back and take a look at it and see how we can make it something that's in the 21st century.
And Chris, I just want to say, let's be ambitious. I mean, there's thousands of towns like Jericho that have excluded all but the wealthy in terms of new home construction. And let's really do something here. Let's be ambitious. It's okay to compare, look what other towns around here, but they're just they're bad too. And I think we should have the courage. And we've had interim zoning before. If there's something that everybody's terrified about and they're really worried about living next to people with regular incomes, make it an interim, pass an interim regulation and say, we're going to try it out for 5 years and see how it goes. But, what we're doing now is really, I'm ashamed of what Jericho has done. And let's go all the way. Let's address it.
Okay, any last 2 minutes, any last thoughts before I close this out? All right, I'm hearing none. Thank you, Chris, for staying late
Oh, thank you for having
on an
me.
extra Tuesday.
No, thank you. And
That didn't
got
sound
things-
sincere at all.
no, it doesn't. Oh no, I do want to be sincere because there are some good things that came out of it that I want to follow up on.
You're like, yeah, thank you.
Thank you a lot. No,
Okay.
I do.
All right, my friends. Next up it is 8:30. Amazing. Okay, so next up is roles and procedures. So this has been an off year while we've had a vacancy for chair. Our charter says that we have a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. We also this past year switched to meeting quarterly with some ad hoc meetings as necessary. So I'm opening the floor here. I don't have a vested interest. It would be amazing if someone said, "Hey, I want to be chair." But let's have a discussion about how this year has gone and how we want the next year to look in terms of roles and meeting schedule. Thanks, Wendy.
Quarterly meetings seem to work pretty well. We don't have that many issues that would require being every other month or every month. What we're doing mostly is just reminding planning commission, of which several of us are members of that, of the role of affordable housing in Jericho's ongoing development. And screaming it louder from the hilltops isn't going to change it. So I think that once a quarter and updating the planning commission on what we're doing is the right schedule. I'm not going to volunteer to be chair. I'm not going to be voluntold to be chair either.
I'm not volunteering anyone.
I think Zach's ready to go.
Listen, I'll tell you my story over a beer some other time.
I was just about to say, I think that I need a lot more context and spousal discussion before I volunteer myself for anything.
Yes. I want to push back and say that yes, the workload that we committed ourselves to for this past year hasn't necessitated much more than quarterly meetings. I don't think that that's because there isn't work that could be done, but the work that we committed to, I agree. I want to put a pin in what you said about two of us being on the planning commission, because I know that's something that Chuck wants to talk about, and I want to make sure, Chuck, that we get to it. But I want to talk about this a little bit more. I would say if we stayed with meeting quarterly and having ad hoc meetings more frequently as needed with a specific for a specific reason, I'd love for each of those meetings now for someone to volunteer to chair and take notes for each of those meetings. Because I just feel like it always falls on my shoulders and I don't need to be, you don't need to have any special skill to walk through an agenda. And we all know each other well enough to kind of get through a meeting. So if we continue moving forward without a designated chair, I would just ask that ahead of time, there's 4 meetings. Everybody sign up for a meeting before we leave tonight.
I'm totally okay with that plan. My issue has been that my schedule is, sometimes I can't look that far out, but I can try to see if I can look as far out as the next meeting or something so that this is possible. But in general, I think that's a good idea to divvy up the load a little bit better.
So but Chuck, do you have anything to add there?
I'd love to see us build out to 7 and, meet more frequently and, try to become more of a force. I have been working a little bit with Meg Sullivan, who is the vice chair of the Vermont Chamber of Commerce and is their lobbyist on housing. And I went through our HOA business with her, and she put in, she's got a bill working the way through, which is going to ban HOA from banning ADUs, both prospectively and retrospectively.
Yeah.
And, so she's, and I asked her if she would be, put her hat in the ring to join the committee. And she said, sure. So she's sending an application to the select board.
Great.
And I feel like there's, I feel like we could fill out the roster, and I'd love to see us fill out the roster and, and do more. I think
Same.
we are missing some, I understand a level of difficulty on that, but, and I also think that we could maybe be recruiting more specific expertise. It'd be great to have someone who knows something about building. Meg is going to bring us some, if she joins, would bring us, we'd be current on legislation, like we would have that covered.
Yeah.
But somebody who knew something about building, and then, it'd be great to have somebody. We have misread the planning, the zoning regulations. Maybe somebody could really read that stuff. So I think, given this moment in time, I believe if we could get serious about filling out the roster. The issue with planning members, or at least 2 out of 5, I think, is that it's it's kind of like, which hat are you wearing at which time? I'm sure it's an issue for you guys, I would think. There's times when, you are, and I'm really comfortable bringing this up because I know you guys are going to tell me to buzz off if you feel like I need buzzing off. So that gives me the confidence to speak like this. But you're involved in the sausage making, and you kind of know, you have a sense as to like what's possible and not possible at the planning commission. You're trying to get like as much as you can from the planning commission, but you're kind of in that process. And when you're, and I think it just makes it, I just wonder whether it makes it hard for you to be like a real advocate representing the housing, committee in pushing the planning commission and pushing the select board. Like if you're pushing the select board, it's like, which hat are you, which hat are you wearing? And I couldn't help but notice that it was, we did lose some members, but it was when it was 2 of the 5 of us was on the planning commission that we then switched to quarterly meetings, because I think for SJU and Eric, it was kind of redundant.
No, that's not why. It's because we didn't have a chair, and because I wasn't able to do the same workload for the committee for personal reasons. So,
Right. And you joined the planning
the
commission.
vacuum of, that there was a vacuum that wasn't being filled, and so that's where we ended up. My question is, we have from its inception had at least one planning commission member on the committee as a liaison and also as an acting member. I was just looking at our charter, and it doesn't specify that has to be the case. So if the committee feels like having a planning commission liaison member is not useful, or that, I think that's a conversation that we can have. If it's a numbers game and it feels
Yes,
like 2 is too many, if it's a personal conduct situation and we need to, I don't know. I guess my question is, what, 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 I appreciate having a really frank conversation about this because it's something that we as a committee haven't done before.
I just noticed a difference when it was one planning commission member and 7 members, who was 1 of 7 and 2 of 5, that's all. And I offer that up. I don't, and I would like to see us really fill the thing out to 7 people and maybe we do work in more stuff in committees and do meet quarterly. I do feel like when we meet quarterly, we sort of get together and like, well, what is happening? Who's happening? What's happening? Just it's certainly hard to monitor what's going on in town and what's going on with the planning commission and the select board. If we're getting together quarterly and we want to speak as a committee, it's difficult if we're only meeting quarterly.
So
I agree
I
with
think
both
that
of those
it's
statements.
yeah, I think it's important to have members of other committees or commissions that are also on our committee. And it would be good if we had more than just the planning commission represented. I would love to join the DRB, but it meets on Wednesdays and that doesn't work for me. Otherwise, I would have done that because I think otherwise we duplicate work. We need to know what's going on in those committees, and because that's super relevant to our committee, and not having anybody who's also on the planning commission would just create additional work for us to try to understand what is going on. We at one point considered having somebody from the select board, recruiting somebody from the select board to be on our committee. So I don't think that that's a conflict of interest necessarily. I hear you, Chuck, but I don't think it's an adversarial relationship where you can't play for both teams. And I think it wouldn't be good not to have a member of as many committees as we can on our committee. And I haven't really perceived a problem with 2 planning commission members. I haven't really experienced that sense. I agree that it would be nice to have a full complement of 7. I don't think necessarily that relates to this for me, though, in my head. And as far as quarterly and monthly meetings, I'm lazy, so quarterly has worked for me, but I could certainly try to step it up.
I mean, I think I agree. I'd love to have more numbers, and I agree that the quarterly meetings feel like life support and not like an active committee with a vision and an agenda. So
But just to be clear,
I lost you. Can you say that again, Chuck? No, it sounds like you're. I wonder if then what feels like a good path forward. Doing what we've been doing, which is meeting quarterly and adding meetings, or going back to the monthly schedule and just canceling when knowing that we may end up canceling a couple of meetings, especially as we kind of fill our ranks.
I'd like to see us fill our ranks before we make any radical changes at this point. But that doesn't preclude us from saying something to the general effect of, here are 3 tasks that we as a committee agree are something we should get information on in order to produce specific recommendations around it, and assigning those tasks to the members when they come back the next quarter, here's what we've decided, here's what we've seen. We've done the task. Now let's define what we tell the select board or the planning commission or somebody else needs to be done. Because there's a lot of time and effort we can spend studying the problem. We've done a really good job of studying the problem. We have not come up with a lot of practical, implementable solutions to the problems. And that's really what we should be doing more of. Instead of studying it and saying how bad it is, how do we fix it? And we don't need to meet every month to do that.
I think yes, and there are things that we could be doing that are real obvious low-hanging fruit that we've mentioned many times. I think rather than I might tweak what you said to say rather than assigning that each person or a group of two or something should say, I'm really interested in, or I'm really willing to commit to doing X or Z. I think we don't have enough time. It's 8:45. I don't think we have enough time to flesh out a work plan, which I think is what you're kind of getting to, is kind of identifying the areas of focus and the areas of energy. And we can definitely, I think we should definitely hash that out. Chuck, you're back. What, do I need to beat someone up for you? Because I will. If somebody's
Yeah.
messing with you, you tell me
Yeah,
about
somebody, it's me and my boy. We settled
it. Okay. Go ahead. What were you saying? We lost you there for a minute.
I was saying I couldn't hear Eric.
A good excuse, Chuck, a good excuse.
Um,
What did Eric
okay.
say?
So I think we've got one potentially interested party unless we've scared him away. Chuck, you feel relatively confident in at least one potential new member. I haven't heard anything for 3 months from the other person that had come to our meeting and showed an interest.
Yeah, Meg told me that she's going to send an application to the select board to join the committee. She would be fantastic.
I've got 2 or 3 people that have shown interest, but the time wasn't right, and I can ring them back up again.
Well, maybe could we talk about the skills we need?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we really could use a builder, or someone who knows something about building.
Yeah.
With Meg, we get somebody who knows a regular, knows what's going on in Montpelier. And Eastern Rivers has local knowledge. And
All right, so I'd propose
let's get some
then
people who know more than we do.
I'd propose then that we schedule that we plan our next meeting for next month, which is the second Tuesday of next month is April 14th. I'd propose that I'm kind of moving on to I'm going to table the work plan discussion from tonight because we won't have enough time. And in April, let's continue this conversation and then broaden it out to a potential work plan for the year.
I suggest that we all come to that meeting with 2 or 3 priorities to help build out that plan.
That sounds like a great idea. Does that sound okay to other folks?
Yes,
priorities as in ideas, or can you say a little bit more about what our homework would be?
2 to 3 areas that you think will be most important and most impactful for improving affordable housing opportunities in the town of Jericho, that we can then decide which of those we want to put our efforts behind.
I do agree with that. I would like to figure out how we can best advocate for proposals we've already made, like right now. Because it does seem like a lot of what we have been, a lot of the effort that we put into those suggestions that have already been made is kind of hanging in the balance. And it's like, I think the planning commission has heard from the two of you. They have not heard from the housing committee that I wonder even that they're looking at the wrong proposal, the wrong, the wrong proposal. But
Okay, so we'll plan to meet April 14th to continue this discussion, flesh out a work plan, and talk about membership.
and could we talk about at that meeting the advocacy for our current proposal?
Yeah, I think that falls under work plan. That sounds like one of the priorities you'll bring.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess based on the schedule that we just heard from Chris, it does. Okay.
And I don't want to ignore what you said, Chuck. I will definitely think on it. I think to be quite frank, my intention was to leave the committee entirely. And I feared that I feared that the committee wouldn't continue if I did that. I just wasn't sure. And so I have tried to stay on to kind of shepherd us through to whatever the next iteration looks like. And that may have been a poor decision on my part. But I will say that I do try very carefully and clearly to differentiate when I'm speaking on behalf of the Planning Commission, because it means I'm defending something that isn't necessarily my position. So if nothing else, I don't want the Planning Commission to be the Planning Commission's agenda to necessarily be reflective of mine, because often they're not. But I do take what you say to heart, Chuck, and I don't know that there's an answer for it right now, but
Yeah, there's not an answer now. This is not about it. It's not about integrity and any of that. But I feel like we need to be able to go up toe to toe with the planning commission. And if I felt, and it just seems hard to do that this way,
I mean,
if
I will say
just,
that I don't know how to go toe to toe without a chair. Like and maybe that's just how I operated as chair, but and you're right. I'm certainly not the person to go toe to toe with the Planning Commission. I do that as a Planning Commission member pretty fiercely, or I try to. But you're right. I'm not the person to do that. And you're not the person to do that either. And
can
so
I just say that I object to, can I just say that I object to that whole paradigm?
Yeah, go ahead.
It really irks me, and it brings out the very few core feminist concepts I have in me, which is that this is a very male way of looking at interactions within a town. This adversarial, we have to like go to toe to toe, and you have to play on one team and not on both. I'm sorry, but I just don't think it needs to be that way, and we don't need to think that way. And inviting Chris Shaheen and having him explain to us what's going on in the Planning Commission, for example, is something that we can do in a collaborative way, and appreciating each other's efforts and work. And we're all volunteers here. I don't need that. I don't need to go toe to toe.
If I can add into that, Frederica, it's not just a female characteristic. A lot of men also prefer to do collaborative work. But in this particular case, I don't see a conflict. We are assigned by the select board to look for proposals and solutions for housing. The Planning Commission is one of the groups that would implement the things we recommend to do as part of their planning programs. So in a way, we are collaborating, we work with them, we feed input to them. And the fact that two of us are on the Planning Commission, I don't see anything coming from SJ, and I don't think she sees anything coming from me in Planning Commission meetings that says, oh, the Affordable Housing Committee wants to do this, so I'm going to push the Planning Commission that way. The Planning Commission generally is going in this same direction too. People on the Planning Commission want more housing. That is not, shouldn't be news to anybody. So I really don't see an adversarial relationship at all. We are collaborators. We're working towards the same end goal. That's my perspective.
Well, but I do think that it is worth thinking through what a liaison role is, because I don't, I will answer questions or provide context or history in a planning commission meeting about the housing committee in the same way that I do planning commission in a housing committee meeting. If the housing committee were to go before the planning commission, I would not volunteer myself to do that unless that was something the committee wanted. Because I'm already kind of representing those things, and if we're representing the committee, I don't know, that's a conversation that we can have. But if there feels like there needs to be a more formal liaison role or something, we can talk about that. We also haven't had anything to bring. Like they've had these recommendations and they're working on them. And I think inviting Chris Shaheen here was important and was a good start. And we have talked about trying to figure out how to kind of insert ourselves and participate as a committee in this process more. And it's just been difficult in this weird off year. Okay, I wanna table this because I don't think there's any more decisions to be made tonight, and we can continue the conversation in April. Is that okay with everybody? Sorry. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And Frederick, I appreciate you taking the moment to call that out too. Okay, so the two pieces of other business that I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, three. One is there's a volunteer celebration. Hopefully you've RSVP'd, but it's March 20th. If you don't know what I'm talking about, email me and I'll make sure that you know. Third, select board talked about fee structure at their last meeting, and changing the fee structure to incentivize or at least not hurt multi-unit dwellings, et cetera. I didn't get a chance to watch that in detail. I watched it on 2x speed while I was doing something, and the minutes aren't posted yet. So I don't think any decisions were made at that meeting, but there was discussion, and it sounded like Amy is the one who's heading up the work on that. And Amy and Paula were going to do another round of changes. And it sounded like they were going to reach out to one of us to talk about that. So just heads up. And then they also announced what they're doing with Railroad Circle, which is basically because of the wastewater capacity or lack of capacity. They're going to subdivide into 2 parcels. They're going to sell off the front parcel with the existing structure. I think at just market rates. And the back portion of the land that they're parceling off, they will give to Habitat for Humanity, who plans to build a 3-bedroom, 2-story, single-family dwelling. It's not multi-unit, but it is perpetually affordable. Any other business quickly in the last minute or two that anyone wants to shout out? Zachary, I said that we would, or Zach, sorry, I said that we would circle back to you and we're out of time, but do you have any last minute pressing questions, concerns? This is the best, this is better than anything I could tell you offline about what to expect. Okay.
I'm still interested.
I have questions that we can take offline and would love to keep exploring it. I don't want to say yes or no without like
and we can
thinking, because I've done that a lot in my life and ended up disappointing myself and the people I said yes to. And so I'd rather.
Oh, look at you. Yeah, I need to learn that. You can reach out. I'm sure it's okay to speak for any of us here. You can reach out to any of us, and we'll give you our frank perspectives. Okay, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thanks, Eric. Who's my second?
Second.
Thank you, Frederica. All those in favor say yes. Yes. All right. Drive safe, Chuck. Have fun, my friend.
Yeah. Bye-bye.